Thus, as a conclusion, it becomes evident to my so educated eye, as it must be to any friends of mine, that, contrary to many beliefs, having just thought about it again, it is actually relatively completely realistic, even on a normal budget like myself. Obviously not if you are the vast majority of humans who have no idea about history, who are in fact very intellectually poor, and who are probably living below the minimum considered poverty in the Western world, because the vast majority of people are not lucky like us, being from Western Europe and or places like Dubai, or Western Europeans like me living in Dubai. But if you are a normal person, as per my category of beings, in other words, a Western European, no need be to be a multimillionaire, it becomes completely realistic if one is as passionate as I, and as persistent as I, and has as much time to spend upon it as I, but probably even less because I'm very slow. Even if one is 2 meters tall and completely obese, to have proper reproductions. By that meaning, I posted in that playlist, more or less, a video. Now I'm making the conclusion is, Bernadette Banner, whom I love because she's the only person that actually explained the utopia of historical accuracy in the video I recommended, whereby she explains that the absolute of the absolute nothing can be historically accurate. There's no such thing as such a conception, like the conception of time, or because even back in 1891 it cannot be historically accurate to 1890, because in the absolute of the absolute, the same conditions to recreate the exact same garment are never met, because simply even the atmosphere changes, and thus to some degrees, without us being even conscious or aware of it in the least effective way, the same person might sew the garment. But that is not really what I mean by historical accuracy. I do not take it that far. I mean only simply I'm a person that, instead of, I'm not part of that movement that, for example, seeks to say, oh, we created the conception of, but I'm bound to say that has nothing to do with clothing, but just to explain what I mean, we invented the conception of what humanity is. We categorize that. So what is truly the difference between a dog and a human? There may be none. To me, I'm down to earth. I simply see that there are massive differences between dogs and humans. For example, it's clear to me that dogs are superior to us in essence of their beings, their spirit, and by far their physique. Having said that, I would never have a dog, because it is also obvious to me that a plant, contrary to what people say, is not alive at all and can be eaten without any moral problems, but eating a dog or a cow is awful, and there's no need to explain why, because it's simply eating living creatures is awful, whether it be an insect or a dog. So I'm very down to earth. Or likewise, people will say, we pay a lot of importance to the categories of men and male and female, much more than any other species. That is probably true, or at least any other species that I know of, the usual ones, dogs, whatever, not some weird unknown creatures living 20 kilometers below the earth, But really, there may be no differences at all, so why is it that you are male or female? Do not write it on the passport. I see the problem of making those big categories of male and female, but I also see the problem of that in essence, initially and still in its core structure and dictionary, it simply means, for a down-to-earth person like me, that you have a different sex and a different physique. And so since a passport is for security purposes, likewise they put your eye color and your skin, and they do not put your skin color because it is easily changeable, unlike the eye color. So they put the eye color, and they should put your sex, because most people do not change sex. And if you do change sex, then they put the change, because that is simply not to categorize you, to judge you in the sense of, oh, well, you're not part of that club. It's simply to look at for people and make sure that if you killed 50 children for no reason, maybe you would still be found at the airport, because at least we know it is a man with green eyes or whatever. So, being down to earth, what I mean by historical accuracy, I simply mean the basics, which are practically never met. And a lot of them say, yes, it is completely historical accurate because we used an original pattern, which, for example, would be from the Gentleman's Gazette of Fashion, published in 1868. I'm giving the actual book I know off on the top of my head, which also gives precise instructions by the tellers. And we followed that, and we used an original thread that we found on eBay after 15 hours of research. And we used the original needles, and we even recreated the cloth because we found another manual which exists, which explains actually there are many of those, how to make a cloth. And the yardage was original because we used the same type of sheep that is type, whatever is the name, found only in the mountains of Greece back then, which now also found in the mountains of Italy. So I had it shipped from Italy, the yardage, and it was spun the same manner by a traditional farmer, and all of that, and then they recreate the same cloth and make the same outfit using the same pattern and the same sewing techniques. But there's one thing they just did not think about, was how it was dyed, and to me how cloth is dyed completely affects the more than is the lapel that the river, to be called in proper English, that width or that width. It does not really make a big difference. The problem is how it is dyed. Likewise, the problem is also what I explained about recreating the cloth is actually extremely rare. Almost nobody even thinks of that. They simply think it was a weighted cloth, so let us find a similar weight of cloth and 100% wool. But that does not mean anything. Wool can be made from my hair. Is it going to create the same wool? Not at all. People who had humongous hair, some of them made wool out of it. It creates a completely different wool. A dog would create a completely different wool. There's the Angora rabbit wool, the most expensive in the world, which is absolutely different from sheep wool. And then to have different breeds of sheep, or races, if you want to call them sub-races. They're not called races because they can easily reproduce between each other, so technically it is more breed, which create completely different wool. And then there are actually different races of sheep, most of them extinct, but some are still in existence, and some people are trying to have them breed again to, well, for them not to be, die out. And it creates, again, an even more different type of wool, and then it depends how you treated the wool, and also it depends, is it a Sheffield breed of sheep? They call it Sheffield like the area for a reason, because if it is brought up in that area, the atmosphere and the grass and how it grows and everything, it's very different than if it was brought in the north of Scotland. So if that sheep born as a baby, I sort of kidnap him from his family and bring him as a pet with me to Scotland, to the north of Scotland, and I also have a lot of grass there, and like a huge garden, and he can eat all day and be alright there. He would be happy, except he misses his family, but he will make a different type of wool, because he's eating a different type of grass, living in a colder environment, and the grass is different because everything is different there. And then if instead of having brought him from North Scotland, I had actually brought him when he was a baby to Dubai, and they still can grow grass here, and he lives outside, he will grow up to make a different wool, simply because the sun here will actually even will sort of damage his hair. My hair here is damaged, it becomes thinner and lighter than it does in Europe. So that is the reason for which I call it a breed of sheep, that usually are named after the area it has settled in. And likewise, if it is a Sheffield sheep, and who lives in Sheffield, but who is being tortured in a concentration camp, like many sheep are now, where the wool come from, it is going to produce a completely different wool. That's the reason for which the Sheffield Harris tweed usually comes from Sheffield sheep. Those sheep are well treated, not because of any compassion from those shitty humans, but simply because they want a good quality wool. That is the only reason for which they treat them well and are free, more or less free in the lands and islands, and sort of can do what they want, because that way it produces a much higher quality wool. So, but nobody even pays attention to that. A lot of people do not pay attention to that. And some of them, like Zach Pinson, I feel like I only get Hallis tweed or Hallis cloth very good. But the Hallis cloth now, I knew nothing about cloth. I simply watched a barely hour-long documentary by Kirby Allison. And they clearly explain that to make their cloth differently using different machines which do a different yardage. So if the loom is different, I do not care to use the